Hi everyone, welcome back to React 19 series. Today we are going to look at React 19 from a practical developer point of view rather than just listening features. We will see what problems React 19 is trying to solve and then build small example for each major feature. The biggest theme is a simpler handling of asynchronous work, especially forms and mutations. So let's move to next slide. So React 19 makes async UI patterns more first class. Actions connect mutations with pending error result states. Form can use action function directly. Optimistic UI gets a dedicated API. Server components and server functions are part of the modern React model. So, the easiest way to understand React 19 is to think about asynchronous user interactions before React 19. We often wrote a lot of state variables for loading, success, errors, and optimistic updates. React 19 introduces APIs that make those workflows more declarative. It does not remove the need for a backend, but it gives React a better model for coordinating the UI around asynchronous actions. So let's move to next slide. So imagine a simple form that updates a user's name. Traditionally, I might create loading state, error state, success state, and a submit handler that works, but the component becomes mostly about coordinating synchronous state. React 19 gives us tool to move much of that coordination into the React model. So let's move to next slide. So now what are the actions? So action is an async mutation update workflow. React can track work started as an action, action integrate with pending state and optimistic UI. So I would say actions are the conceptual foundation behind several React 19 features. And action is basically a function that represents asynchronous work that changes something. The important part is not the word itself. It is the integration. React can understand that this work is happening and coordinate pending state, optimistic state, and the final result. So let's move to next slide. So useActionState is one of the most useful APIs for form workflows. Instead of separately managing the result and loading state, the hook gives us the current state. A function is used to trigger the action and a pending flag. The action receives the previous state so it can return the next state, including validation messages or success information. So let's move to, yeah, I will show you a demo for the it as well, as I already created some simple, very simple code to explain you how this use action state works. So what I have done here, I build a small profile form. Let me show you UI, this one. So I have built a small profile form, submit form data. It will return validation errors, show pending state, show success messages. So it's just nothing, small component. If you look on it, this one use action state. And so if you look on the code, I will take you through code here. You can see this thing. And what I have done here, I have just created a functional component, simple functional component with a simple form. Here I created a action, and this is a state where I have used use action state. Now you notice that action is not an event handler receiving a browser event with a form action. React give us form data. I can validate the name, return an error object, and React stores the return object as the new state. The third value tells me whether the action is currently pending. So now look on it. You see what happened? Name required. So line number 5, it is coming from line number 5. And I'm not using very special css, for example, proper red color for showing the errors, because I just want to explain you the simple scenario. I typed here sunny. Now it's saved sunny. So now let's move to new slide. So now, how does this use form state works? Use form state solves a very specific problem. A child component needs to know whether its parents form is submitting. The important detail is that it reads the status of the parent form, not a form declared in the same component. So this make it ideal for a reusable submit button component that can disable itself and change its label automatically. So use form state, let me show you what I have done here. So this is again very simple small code, just a small form with an action with a one input, and here is another component called. I put the component in the same file, so it can be visible and easy to explain. And if you look on this thing, what happens? Button reads parents form pending state automatically. So let's try to add something. So let's move to now slide 8. So I explain you better way. So this React 19 makes form feels much closer to the platform instead of always writing on submit, preventing the default event, reading inputs, and manually managing loading state. We can give the form an action function. The browser still gives us normal form semantics while React layers its action model on top. So let's move to next slide. Use optimistics. So now what is this optimistic UI? It means we don't make the user wait for the server before showing the expected result. If I click like, I want I want her to change immediately. Use optimistics give us a temporary view of the state while the action is running. Once the real state catches up, React coverage on the actual value. So let's look on this, and will again I have a very simple code, and you see what's happening. It's incrementing if I click on like. So here I have created a simple button. On click like, this one get called, and this increases. Set like, you will be able to now understand it how it's working. Line number 4 is nothing, it's just a state. So now let's move to slide number 10, which I already shown you how it worked. So it's nothing, just a like button with a real count and an optimistic count, and user is clicking the optimistic value changing immediately, and async save starts. So you click on this code, I will show you again and try to understand. And if the request succeeds, the parent can update the real count. If it fails, the optimistic value is temporary, so the UI can return the real count. So we'll take you through next slide. So the use API is unusual because it doesn't follow every traditional hook rule. It can read a promise or a context. While reading a promise, React can suspend the component until the promise resolves, allowing suspense to show a fallback. This becomes particularly interesting with server component and streaming. So we'll show you code as well. This one again, it's very simple code, simple kind of and same kind of HTML I have put everywhere. And you look, so use API and how it's working. You can look on the code and try yourself. So here what I have done, it's like, I already shown you this demo. So what I have done here, if you look back in the code, the promise that resolves after a short delay. The child component is just receiving the promise and calls use on it. While the promise is pending, React suspends the component, and suspense shows the fallback. When the promise resolves, React renders the data. This is a very different mental model from manually keeping loading and data state. So now let's move to next slide, slide number 13. Where is the PPT? This one. So, so React 19 makes ref simpler for a function components. In previous React versions, forwarding a ref generally meant using forward ref. In React 19, a function component can receive a ref as a prop directly. This reduces ceremony and makes component easier to read. It is especially useful for reusable input components. So next one is I will show you the code as well. Here I have used ref, input ref. So you see what happened. I have used here this one to just focus. So let me open the PPT. Where is PPT? This one. So let's discuss about error handling improvements. So React 19 improves the place where application errors can be observed. If you look at the root, create root can receive callbacks for quote, unquote, and recoverable errors. And let me open the code as well. I already mentioned. Yeah, so I would say like these error handling improvements are very useful for logging and monitoring. A separate point is form validation. Expected validation failures usually should be returned as action state, while unexpected programming errors can be thrown and handled by an error boundary. So let's move to next slide. So slide number 15. So React server components. So what are these React server components? So they are nothing just a major architecture topic. So a server component renders in a separate server environment. So server only work can happen before the component reaches the browser. Interactive pieces remain client components. One important warning for tutorial is that React itself provides the model, but the actual build and deployment setup is normally provided by the framework or a bundle. So let's move to next 16 number. So server functions connect a form and action model to server-side mutation. A server function can be called from client code, and React handles the network boundary. In production, we still need authentication, authorization, validation, and secure handling of inputs. React does not magically make a server function safe. So next one is 17. Why should you actually use? So if we are learning React 19, I would not try to use every feature everywhere. Start with the actions and the form APIs because they solve common problems. Add use optimistic where instant feedback improves UX. Use the use API when your application architecture already benefits from suspense or promise based data, and use ref as a prop to simplify reusable components. And now look on the last slide probably. So uh, uh, for the final verdict, I would connect the concept rather than treating them as isolated APIs. The common story is the user performs an action, React tracks the asynchronous work, the UI can show pending state, the UI can optimistically update, the action returns a result, and error can be handled at the right level. So this is the real React 19 story. So now last one. The main takeaway is that React 19 is about a better model for asynchronous UI, actions, forms, APIs, optimistics, state, and the use API all move us towards describing what the UI should do while asynchronous work is happening rather than manually coordinating every state transition. This is the message I want viewers to remember from this chapter. So thank you for watching the video. See you next video. Thank you.